Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fioros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, excited. I've got Vessi Kapoulian on the show. And she's going to have to help me with the pronunciation. I hate butchering names, so hopefully I got that one right. But Vessi is the founder of Dream, Believe, Achieve Capital Group. I love that name. A real estate investment company based in LA. And she helps busy professionals who are tired of working long hours to try and create passive income streams, but helps them to reach their goals, leaving us a legacy for their families. You listeners know we're huge on legacy here, so definitely excited to talk to Vessi today. She's also made the transition from residential to commercial, has tons of experience on the commercial lending side, having spent 15 years in commercial lending and extensive experience on the business management side. So definitely excited to dive into her journey. Vessi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Steven. You said the name perfectly well. So thanks. Excited to be here today.
Yeah, no, glad to have you on. Well, for those of our listeners that may not be kind of familiar with you and kind of your background, your history, give us a little bit of your story. Did you come from a family that was into real estate investing and you already had a real estate empire and you just inherited it? Or like, how did that work?
I know that's definitely not my story, maybe the story of others, but I grew up in a very different time, different place. I'm actually originally from Bulgaria. And when I was growing up, the wall still existed. So I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. And at the time, there wasn't really a developed stock market in Bulgaria. So when people talked about investments, they often referenced real estate and hard assets. And for many people, it was even considered huge success to eventually purchase an apartment or buy their home and maybe a second home, like a vacation home. And so not necessarily cash flowing property, but something that they can buy that grows in value over time, that they can pass on to their kids and future generations. So from that perspective, you could argue that the concept of real estate investing was nurtured in me early on, although that seed didn't quite germinate for some time. It was always my dream to study in the US. So I got to work, earned a full scholarship, came here, and from there on, really took on the more traditional path of going to school and joining a corporate firm and climbing that corporate ladder. And quickly I realized I was actually climbing the wrong ladder. As I looked up, I saw a lot of executives and senior management trading time for money. Also along the way, lived through the 08-09 financial crisis. My own employer went through a couple of restructures that left between the market events and or the restructures left people either without retirement or decimated retirement accounts and or without jobs. And at that point, I took a step back. I wish I had picked up the clues earlier, but it took me some time. But I picked up the clues eventually, and I asked myself, well, I don't control restructures. I don't control corporate market events. But what is it that I can do to control my destiny and really start saving for retirement outside of the volatility of the stock market? And that's when I think in those moments of crisis, you revert back to maybe old habits or what. And I think that's when that seed of real estate really germinated. I took that first step, which was extremely scary, and that's buying the first investment property. For me, that happened to be out of state, and I can go into the reasons why. And I took very small but incremental steps. So over time, as my residential portfolio started to grow and it was performing well, naturally the question arrived, well, how do I scale this further? This is not just a small retirement nest egg. This can be actually something bigger, not only for me, but that can potentially impact others in a positive way. That was the point of time when I decided to scale into multifamily and now looking to continue to grow from here and help others along the way.
No, that's awesome. And very inspirational story too. Your background there, just to kind of highlight a couple of different things there. For one, we kind of share a similar background just in terms of mindset. And I definitely want to pick your brain a little bit about that also. just like how important like mindset has been through you throughout kind of your journey, just because I definitely know like it's a challenge, especially you coming from a different background, different culture. Obviously that plays into our decision making and that kind of deal. So kudos to you for taking the challenge. I love it. And I've heard this before. My wife is also not originally from this country, but it's like there's an immigrant edge. I always feel like, because it's like you see the opportunity and you obviously took a hold of it and went to grab for it. I think a lot of times those of us that grew up here kind of overlook the potential that's out there. We get very used to, okay, well, just like you said, oh, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to kind of get my 9 to 5 and I'll work my 30 years or whatever long. And I'll retire my pension and my 401k. And it's like, we saw it, you and I both saw this gypsy and all the fallout and all of the, and you said it yourself, right? We don't have control over a lot of those dynamics. You lose power over your own life. And I hear this a lot, and I'm sure maybe you have also, but it's like you do networking and it's like, well, I can't invest in real estate. It's so risky. And it's like, honestly, you're so much more at risk just having the one stream of income working your W-2. Again, you love your job. Awesome. There's certain fields that are very resilient, but gosh, you really should work to develop more. It sounds like you learned that also through the crisis. So now you mentioned that you started in residential. What were you buying? Were you buying just single families, small multis, or kind of what did your portfolio look like initially?
Yes, it started with a single family home and eventually expanded into small multis like duplexes and such. So I took very incremental steps. I wanted to see how that first property works out, especially in my case, because I'm based in Los Angeles. Would have loved to be able to invest in Los Angeles, but putting the regulatory and business environment here aside, my investment objective was building that additional income stream. And so my goal was to invest for cash flow. Not that it's impossible to cash flow here in LA, but first of all, price point of properties is really high. And secondly, to cash flow, you need to put a very substantial amount down. I didn't have those resources and that amount of liquidity. So that naturally pushed me to start looking out of state.
Yeah, no, I mean, we are in very, very similar markets. You're in LA, I'm in Honolulu, and a lot of investors here face the same challenges. It's like, well, hey, I do have some money. I definitely want to try and get started, but I'm not comfortable going outside of my own backyard, right? Or I can't buy a second one because, hey, you know what, even if I do scrape together and I can qualify for it, well, it didn't really cash flow. So it doesn't really help my position.
Right.
So you took the leap, right, of going to a different market for cash flow. How did you kind of determine what markets to go to? I mean, obviously you're kind of a newer investor at that point, like just starting out. Did you have somebody guiding you along the process? Were you doing your own due diligence? Like how did that work out?
First of all, I started educating myself, and it started with local seminars, meetups, somewhere in person, somewhere virtual. And there was one particular organization here and then one particular speaker who was more active, always either bringing in guest speakers or being a guest speaker himself. And so when I made the decision to take that first step, one day I reached out to him and called him and acknowledged, appreciated everything and all the information he shared. And I asked him, hey, I know you talk a lot about investing out of state. Do you know someone who sells homes out of state, and how do I get started there? And luckily for me, or sure enough, he was actually selling homes out of state. And that happened to be Memphis, Tennessee. I previously had visited Memphis multiple times. And so I had some familiarity with the city. So that also helped. And really at that point of time, it was taking action, doing my diligence on the submarket, on the property, the numbers. But at that point of time, I was determined to take that first step and not get caught up in analysis paralysis, because admittedly, there are probably a lot of other locations I could have considered or invested. But that conversation opened one door and one opportunity, and I decided to go down that path, again, doing my proper diligence. So.
Yeah, that's great. And again, kudos to you for taking action. Like this is a hard part. And like you said, too many people, and you know, and I'm guilty of it too, right? You get caught up in analysis paralysis, and you can analyze a market to death, or analyze an individual property or strategy or whatever. And a lot of times it's like, look, you just got to get started, right? You took the first step, got to get started. Let me get some resource in the area. Let me arm myself with as much as I can need to make an informed decision. and then just move forward. And did you learn? I'm sure you learned some lessons along the way.
Oh, definitely. And one thing I wanted to add is I think oftentimes you reach these crossroads in life, and for better or worse, it's those unfortunate events that push you to take that action. I probably could have stayed in the comfort zone like many people, but having witnessed some of what was occurring around me with the events that I mentioned at the beginning of our call, it was that fear of, wow, what if I'm next? I really need to start taking action today because I didn't want to look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now and have regrets that I could have done something, that I should have done something. So I figured if I start small, if I make mistakes and potentially lose money because there is a risk with everything, at least I wouldn't blame myself for not trying to figure this out, not taking that first step. So definitely was that initially was that fear as well, fear of regret and fear of potentially being adversely impacted as well that prompted that action. So yes, definitely, and I can talk about the mistakes. Sorry, I didn't mean to divert the question, but I thought it was important to mention because having that why is really what I think pushes you eventually.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, no apologies necessary. And you're absolutely right. Like it's one of those things where, because you talked about like kind of the crisis and the crossroads, you're going to fix it. Life is life. Everybody's going to run into it. None of us are going to escape it alive. So it's one of those things like at some point, everybody's going to face a crisis. And so you'd rather be in a stronger, let's say a financial position than not to be equipped to weather the storm, to be better prepared. And so the sooner you can start, the better. You will learn those life lessons eventually. And you obviously took action. You saw that. You saw the potential of having some real big challenges, let's say just with your own employment, that hey, you know what? Let me be proactive. Let's go ahead and get this ball rolling. If it doesn't work, totally fine. At least I tried and we can work through it. But if you don't, then what? Like that becomes the crux. And that's something that every investor, for those of our listeners that are on the fence about starting in real estate or just getting out of your comfort zone, well, you have to, you just, that's the path to growth. If you just stay in your little comfort of your box, I know that it's safe, but honestly, if you have such a higher ceiling, you have so much more potential that's untapped in all of us, but you got to get outside of your comfort zone. So kudos to you for taking that leap. And not only does that benefit you, of course, talking about your own personal portfolio, but now you're invested into being able to bring along others for the journey. You're helping others to achieve financial freedom, to have better success in their own security of their financial lives. So, tell us a little bit about, you started to kind of dive a little bit into it. Tell us about some of the challenges you've faced along the journey, even with that initial portfolio or just getting started or really anywhere along the journey. We'd love to hear. Everybody wants to celebrate the wins, right?
Yeah.
But inevitably you're going to run across some lessons too. So any challenges along the way, or was it all rainbows and sunshine?
I wish I could say it was all rainbows and sunshine. And frankly, if it was easy, right, everyone would be doing it. But this reminds me of one duplex actually that I was looking to purchase. Really fell in love with the numbers. Location was great. So my agent went to walk the property, and we even scheduled a date in advance with the understanding that he will be able to view both units. And for some odd reason, or he was given some odd reason that he cannot see one of the two units. Later, we eventually had to get in to do the inspection, which is just part of the standard diligence. And after we got into the second unit, it became pretty apparent why we were not being let in. And it would have required a substantially more amount of work. And I tried to negotiate the price down based on some of those findings supported by the inspector, but the seller wasn't really budging. So I did lose some money as a result of that, some of my diligence money, but I ultimately decided to walk away because capturing those additional costs and expenses just wasn't really aligning well with the original numbers, original projections. So that taught me a very important lesson to which I can now apply as I'm scaling up further in multifamily, namely walk all of your units. That's you may hear odd excuses and odd stories as to why you are not able to access a certain unit, but it's better to find those surprises up front and then make a decision whether you want to move forward or not. And then lesson number 2 is I could have gotten caught up on, oh, I don't want to lose my diligence money or security deposit. But sometimes you just have to cut your losses and move forward versus going deeper and deeper in a hole. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, you got it. And that's a huge lesson because for a lot of investors, it's like, well, I don't want to walk away from losing my MD or whatever, right? I don't want to lose money and I'm just starting. It's like, okay, well, hey, look, if you lose $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever it is, for commercial properties, it's obviously going to be more expensive to get somebody out to do an inspection and phase one or whatever you need. It's going to be thousands of dollars. You would much rather know, just to this point, you'd much rather know, hey, look, gosh, this is going to be a lot more work to get into, to repair, to deal with this tenant or whatever, depending on what state that you're in, depending on contractors in the area and all that kind of stuff. It can cost significantly more and be way more of a headache, destroy your timeline, all of that to move forward on something when you're just trying to force the deal, right? It's you smartly were able to say, you know what, let me walk away from this one. If I lose a little money, I'm just going to have to be okay with that because this is going to save me a lot of time, a lot of headache, a lot of hassle. And then as you scale up, now we have investor capital at play. Now I'm putting investor capital at risk. Don't do it. So
right. Yeah, like once said, the best deals you don't are the ones you don't do sometimes. I heard that phrase. I'm not sure who originated it, but it definitely resonated, reminded me of that situation.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And the value of an inspection too, guys. I'm talking
Yes.
selfishly too, because I have an inspection company here, but I hear people all the time, oh no, I don't need it. It's like, you need a second set of eyes, you know, or third or fourth set of eyes, whether it be the physical due diligence or on the back end, right? On the underwriting, like have some additional eyes that are more experienced than yours. It's not admitting weakness. You're doing your proper homework on making a sound decision moving forward. So,
especially in the residential space, you still have some protections, but in the commercial space, it's buyer beware. So it's on you to ask, to think of all the questions you need to ask, all the things you need to look through. So yeah, I highly recommend. It's in the grand scheme of things, the benefit outweighs the cost. So don't skip over inspection.
Oh yeah. Well, and like somebody like you, like, okay, I have a strong background, like say on the physical due diligence. You have a strong background, let's say on the commercial side, like on the underwriting and looking at the debt and items like that. Whatever you can do to get additional insight from people who they don't even have to have thousands of units or millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars under management. You just need somebody a little bit further down the road than you.
Right.
Get some help, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not weakness. It's actually a sign of wisdom to get some additional help, right? And so, and I know you help investors kind of along their journey on that end of it as well. So, well, tell us about your transition too. So this is obviously you learned lessons on the residential components. At some point you had to switch it up, right? Before you kind of made a jump to commercial. I find I meet a lot of investors, for one, for them to get started in investing at all. That's a big hurdle. Another hurdle is, hey, making the mental jump from residential to commercial. I meet investors with hundreds of units. Oh, I've got 100 single family houses. But you guys do commercial. I can't do commercial. Like that's too big. And I'm like, you're doing a lot of work having 100 single family houses. Tell us about kind of that transition that you had to make at some point to go from residential to commercial.
Yeah, it's a great question. There are actually a couple of different thoughts going through my mind. One is, as I started thinking forward, wow, the portfolio is doing well. How do I scale this further? The first natural math, I guess, that you do is, well, I need to buy so many single family homes that are cash flowing so much. And then when you look at the numbers, you realize, wow, that first of all, that's going to take a long time. And then you get into situations of economies of scale and scope. Are you managing, like you said, 100 different roofs and doors? Or why not combine that in a single space or under a single roof? And the second piece was, even though my primary focus and most of my career, I should say, I spent in the international space or financing middle market multinational companies, I did have an opportunity to work for the domestic division of my employer at one point of time. And a big share of our portfolio comprised of commercial real estate, specifically multifamily and commercial retail. So that also gave me exposure on how to analyze those properties on the lender side. I'm looking at a lot of my old clients and full-time real estate investors who had achieved success. So naturally, as I started thinking about next steps and how do I scale this further, between doing the numbers and thinking through, well, how do I leverage my existing experience forward? Multifamily emerged as the natural next step. Of course, even though I had the experience as a lender, I didn't necessarily have the experience as an operator or looking at the other side of the equation. And so I approached it just like everything I do in my life is first getting educated and then start taking incremental steps and building from there.
Yeah, no, and there is definitely a learning curve. Don't let me, downplay that to making the transition. Like most people it's residential is easy to understand because it's like, well, hey, my parents had a house. I have a
Right.
house. Like I understand the
Right.
process and, you just adding in additional layers in terms of underwriting a single family house. It's easy to base comps and value and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. When you
Right.
transition to commercial, now we have a different valuation system.
Mhm.
You have a lot more moving parts. It's not as easy or to go solo,
Right.
right? And
Right.
I think that's usually, in my experience, like when talking to people, I feel like they have the most comfort because they want to micromanage the whole process. And it's easy to do when you're just dealing with, okay, I've got two single family houses. Cool. You can micromanage kind of every facet of it. You can just be solely involved. You don't really have to have too many other people involved. When you start scaling up, obviously you have a lot more moving parts. And just like you said, hey, I'm strong on the lending side or the underwriting side. I don't have the experience on the operations. And this is where commercial is a total team sport. Like there's a lot more moving components. It's one of those things I think where you have to like, okay, I'm strong here. I'm weak here. Let me find somebody who's complements my strength. And you start to kind of fit these pieces to the puzzle. But most people don't want to try and solve the puzzle.
It's bigger and it's more complex to your point. So you really need to be comfortable working with other people, partnering with other people, and really playing on one another's or each other's strengths and staying in your lane, but also being able to work together. And I know it may sound scary to a lot of people, especially if you want to retain that control. But the way I think about it is, when you're winning, you're all winning together and your joy multiplies. And if you're going through challenges, you're not alone. You're all working together to solve through the problem. And again, that leads into the whole question of partnerships and making
Mhm.
sure you partner up with people who have a similar mentality and values and who are problem solving oriented during moments of crisis versus pointing fingers at one another. So that's a whole other subject, but I feel like it multiplies the joy when you're winning and also helps you work through the challenges and more efficiently when you hit those hurdles.
Oh, I love that. I'm writing that down as a quote. I might have to
Oh,
take this. You're,
that is
I mean,
good.
because the whole team wins. Like, and I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That your joy multiplies. I love that. That's so cool. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of your current portfolio and kind of how you, at this point, maybe help other people along on their journey. Give us a little insight into that.
Absolutely, yes. I started small, first with an 11 unit joint venture and eventually expanded into the syndication space. So now I partner up with operators in those local markets on 100, 150 unit size apartment buildings where we can add value, improve the bottom line, and effectively sell them at a profit, thereby benefiting our investors. But one thing I regretted earlier on is not, well, first of all, not looking into real estate sooner. I really wish I had started 20 years sooner, but I think hindsight 2020 is always easier. But I don't want other people to have a similar regret. So at a minimum, I want to make them aware of all the benefits. And really, real estate is one vehicle that people
Mhm.
can utilize to achieve their personal and financial freedom. I've chosen that vehicle. That is not to say that that is the only way to get there, but I would really like to enlighten others about the powers of real estate and being able to create more options in their personal lives. And I choose to do that by investing in multifamily. So now looking to spread the message and help others along the way.
No, I love that. And it's coming from a position of value add. I mean, it's really the only way that we can bring value to the space. It's like, hey, look, what do you need? Like, how can I solve the problem? The problem's you're stuck in your W-2 or you're siloed into your own business and you don't have any other passive income streams or whatever, right? So that's the problem. The solution is, hey, let me just show you some options. There's a million and one different options out there, but I know for sure this works because it's worked for me. Right.
Exactly.
And I just want to help you to at least be aware that you have something else out there. Cause I do feel like people get kind of trapped in their own mind thinking, well, I have to do this. I have to work. There's no other options for me. It's like, no, there's quite a few.
Right.
You just haven't explored those yet, or you don't know about it yet. Right. So that's great. What does your current portfolio look like? What do you have unit wise or assets under management? Are you guys still investing in Memphis? Did you branch out?
Yes, I definitely branched out. So Memphis is where some of my residential portfolio is located. As far as my multifamily properties, they're primarily in Georgia. So we have one in Savannah, one in Augusta, and then the joint venture is in Florida. I already have some presence there by virtue of my residential portfolio. So I'm looking to stay more focused and not spread myself too thin. And when it comes to the syndications and even for the joint ventures as well, I look to partner with people who are locally there or within a 2-hour drive of the property. Not that they'll be going there every day and checking on it. Of course, we have on-site staff that takes care of day-to-day operations, but I think it's imperative to keep a close pulse on the assets and how the business plan is progressing. So for me, at least personally, having that boots on the ground presence is important. So it's as I look to select potential partners, that's one of my criteria. And secondly, I like to work with teams that are ideally vertically integrated, which allows them to keep a closer control on operations. And right now, we are seeing the importance of that more so than ever. And if they're not vertically integrated, at a minimum, I would like to see that they've worked with that particular property management company over an extended period of time. Everyone was doing great during the last 2-3 years. But I think even with property management firms, right, some of them are struggling either to keep vacancies up or to execute on the rent growth projections, assuming those are realistic, but that's a whole other subject. But even some of the property managers, right, are now starting to struggle. And that's where you distinguish the better ones from the not so great ones. But anyway, so that's kind of when as I look to make those decisions, it's people that I know, like, and trust, that I've had a relationship with for at least a few months. And then I see how they operate, because at the end of the day, it's execution, it's how you deliver on the projections and the estimates that you share with not only your partners, but also passive investors. And so finding those people that can not only execute on the business plan, but underwrite conservatively and are able to pivot is key. And again, the current market, I think, shows the importance of that more so than ever.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's shaking out so many different operators, property managers, just like I said, I mean, we've seen all of it. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're preaching to the choir. And that's the thing, like, this is when the markets get tight. Okay. Then that really starts to squeeze out the kind of the weaker players in the space, or those who didn't underwrite conservatively, and nobody has a crystal ball, and nobody's going to bat 1,000, but there's certain safeguards for sure that you can put into place that will help head off potential problems, and really just having the foresight to be able to kind of see a little further down the road. Again, this is where having that experience comes into play. Like, Vessi is only able to say these things because, for one, she's gleaned knowledge and wisdom from other people in this space, and then also her own experience. This is the value of working with somebody who's an experienced operator, is experienced in whatever it is that you're trying to look into, whether it be residential, commercial. I mean, this holds true, just business. It just holds true across life. So now, thank you for for sharing your journey with us. Well, at this point in the show, we want to transition a little bit to what we call our fire round. It's just a little bit more rapid fire questions, a little bit more straightforward, some a little bit more fun. That's something you're up for?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Sounds good. All right. And it's a personal question. What kind of dog do you have?
Oh, it's a 6-pound Yorkshire Terrier. His name is
Cute.
Ricardo.
Oh, love that. You don't call him Ricky though.
I do call him Ricky. Little secret, he has a star on Hollywood Boulevard. So
Yeah. We're probably aging ourselves a little bit there, but not familiar with that. Go look it up. You won't regret it.
Yeah, I remember when I first got him, a lot of people would ask me, "Where is Lucy?" I'm like, "Who is Lucy?" And I learned the stories.
Yeah. All right. Well, first question, first real question. I was just okay. What is the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Mhm.
the real estate Bible? Do you have any go-to books that are just like, oh yeah, no, this one is the one for me, or maybe that's a handful. I don't know, but we'll take one for now.
Yeah, there's so many. I mentioned one that I haven't shared on prior podcasts, and it's one that I recently read. It's The Go Giver by Bob.
Mhm.
The messaging really, really resonated with me, and it's about adding value and helping others. It just aligns with my personal philosophy, and sometimes easy to forget, especially as you start getting into limiting beliefs. But your ability to impact others, even in a small way, can actually make a pretty profound impact on others' lives. So I really enjoyed reading that.
Yeah, no, amazing book, and you're absolutely right. I can tell like the kind of the heart of that is comes through like let's say in our conversation. So yeah, no, that's an awesome book. Would highly encourage anybody who hasn't picked that up and read it or listened to it. I mean, it's a great book, very simple but very profound. I mean, and that helps across the board. So yeah, great book. What would you consider your superpower is?
Oh,
That's great dog names.
yes, I would say in professionally, it's underwriting. It's the ability to take apart a deal and really get to the core of the numbers and understanding the assumptions and projections and all of that. Basically, ability to evaluate deals, and I would say probably ability to not only connect with people but also evaluate people as well. I like to say I'm very lucky with the partnerships I've built and had, but I think I would also argue that being able to do proper diligence and being able to give yourself time, not rush into relationships, has also been a major factor that has helped me be successful in that arena. So I would say ability to vet partners and deals is probably what I would mention here.
Vital components to a successful investing career. So for sure. Definitely a superpower. Next question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
Gosh, there's so many, but I would say is have clarity of goals and take action. It doesn't have to be major action. It can be that very first step that helps you overcome those initial fears or limiting beliefs, but having clarity of goals and then forging forward to make those dreams real and achieve those goals.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. Imperfect action. Like it's absolutely necessary. We may want it to be perfect and have all the answers every time, but that's just not realistic. And so, yeah, that's great. All right. Next question. For the busy working professional who's trying to work towards financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
I would say, apart from taking action, first and foremost, get educated. It's, of
Mm.
course, oftentimes as you start interacting with sponsors, they will be sharing a lot of content with you and hopefully educating you along the way. But as an investor, and I'm a passive investor myself, I always like to understand how is that underlying business making money and then making an educated decision before I move forward. So getting educated will really help you gain not only clarity, but also down the road help you evaluate investments and sponsors more efficiently.
No, absolutely great. Yeah, and that's great advice. Education, it's that I know that's a reoccurring theme with just in our conversation, but it's true. It's like you want education, but then at some point, yeah, take action. You got to get in there.
Absolutely, yes. Because at the end of the day, you have fiduciary responsibility as a passive investor. That responsibilities towards yourself and your loved ones. So you want to take the time to do that upfront.
I like that. Most of us, when we hear that, we all have a fiduciary responsibility. Of course, I'm thinking about that for our investors. If I'm doing some kind of a sales transaction, yeah, I have a fiduciary responsibility to my client. But you have a responsibility to yourself, and I love that. It's the first time I feel like heard somebody say that, where it's like, yeah, you do. You owe it to somebody. You owe it to you. You owe it to your family and the generations to come. I love that. That's great. That's really great. Well, if our audience wants to reach out to you, Vessi, and they want to connect with you direct, maybe they're in LA, they want to grab a cup of coffee or just come out to network with you or something. What's the best way to reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, the easiest way to connect is through my site, dupe.com. D is in dream, B is in believe, A is in achieve. My contact information is there, as well as a complimentary copy of my first digital book, The Busy Professional's Quick Guide to Investing in Multifamily, designed to educate and empower investors.
Awesome. So make sure you guys go check out Vessi on her site. You reach out, connect with her. You can see what she's got going on, see what her and Ricardo are up to, and hopefully maybe connect with them at some point. So, well, Vessi, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I really enjoy our time together, and I've experienced some improvement, education in my own kind of thoughts. I know our listeners have too. But we look forward to trying staying in touch with you and connecting with you maybe in the future. And yeah, really thank you for coming out today and taking your time out.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me as a guest. I really cherish the opportunity and hopefully added value along the way. Really appreciate it, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. All right. A great conversation with Vessi Kapoulian operating out of LA. She's obviously had a great career in commercial finance, lending. She's an investor herself and an operator currently. So great conversation with her. Lots of great wisdom and insight there in terms of due diligence, making sure to not cut corners, to make sure that you're doing your homework, of course. Let's say your financial homework, get educated was a big deal on her, but also move forward, take some action. At some point, we don't want to get stuck in analysis paralysis. You're never going to get things done that way. I'm guilty of it myself. So I highly encourage you guys for not doing that and taking some steps to move forward. Again, get connected with other people. Get connected with people who are doing the things that you want to do. If you find somebody that's had success in investing or in business ownership or in life, hey, pick their brain a little bit. You're like, hey, I admire you. I like what you've got going on. I like your success that you've had. Would you share any insight with me? It's a simple question. And a lot of times people who are successful are more than happy to share with you gems, how they got to where they are. She also had one of the last things that we kind of wrapped up there in the fire round. We talk a lot about fiduciary responsibility, but taking ownership, right? Fiduciary responsibility to yourself. We owe it, of course, as professionals to our investors, to our clients, but you also owe it to yourself. If you have a family, you owe it to your family, not only for now, but for, let's say, the next generation, right? So I love that. I love that. I've never heard anybody say that, but it's a matter of personal responsibility, taking ownership of your own life, taking ownership of your own financial future. So huge kudos to Vessi for sharing that, and great episode with her. So make sure that you guys reach out to her. If you guys are in LA, of course, just you guys can find her on the site. We'll link her website there in the show notes. Obviously, you guys, if you are interested in connecting with us, go to trustedEquity.com. You can learn more about what we have going on, our prior deals, the ongoing meetups and whatnot that we have. So we'd love to connect with you, schedule up a call with somebody on our team. If you guys are here locally and you're looking to network, if you're looking to kind of pick the brain with their investors or people who are maybe just a little further down the road, or maybe you can bring value. Maybe you're further down the road and you don't realize that you can provide value. There's other people that are looking for your wisdom, your insight. Come out to one of our meetups. We have them every month. Honolulu Multifamily and more. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on meetup.com, Bigger Pockets. We'd love to be able to come out and have you come out and, shake a hand, put a face to the name, connect with other like-minded individuals. Guys, if you find our value in our podcast, please would love a 5-star review. If you hated it, leave us a review saying that you did too. And we want to know that too. And if there's ways that we can improve, we'd love to hear that from you. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. We will see you on the next episode. Go out, get educated, take some action, and we will talk to you soon. Aloha.